Greetings, this is the Grumpy Old Slan, and today we're going to look at 9th level magic user spells in Unearthed Arcana. Looking at the list, we see there are 16 9th level spells, of which 4 are new, and those are the ones that we're going to be looking at today. The first spell is Crystal Brittle. It has a range of touch, a permanent duration. The casting time is 9 segments, and the area of effect is 2 cubic feet per level of the caster. The dwemer of this spell causes metal, whether as soft as gold or as hard as adamantite, to turn to a crystalline substance as brittle and fragile as crystal. Thus, a sword, metal shield, metal armor, or even an iron golem can be changed to a delicate glass-like material easily shattered by any forceful blow. Furthermore, this change is unalterable short of by means of a wish spell, i.e. the spell magic will not reverse the spell. The caster must physically touch the target item, equal to a hit in combat if the item is being worn or wielded or is a monster. Any single metal item can be affected by the spell. Thus, a suit of armor being worn by the subject can be changed to crystal, but the subject's shield would not be affected, or vice versa. All items gain a saving throw equal to their magical bonus value or protection. A +1/+3 sword would get a 10% average of the two pluses chance to save. +5 magical armor, a 25% chance to be unaffected. An iron golem, a 15% chance to save, for it is hit only by magic weapons of +3 or better quality. Artifacts and relics of metal have a 95% chance to be unaffected by the spell. Affected items not immediately protected will be shattered and permanently destroyed if struck by a normal blow from a metal tool or any way weapon, including a staff. There are other spells that allow you to transform various substances into others. This one can be quite powerful, although I feel there's a few things lacking in its description. It takes almost a full round to cast, 9 segments. I would personally rule that if a magic user chooses to cast a spell in combat, that he spends one round just casting it, and in the next round he can try to touch the item in order to transform it into the crystal-like substance. The fact that the suit of armor is considered a single item is the kind of thing that could bring arguments to the table. How do you define what one item is? Technically, a suit of armor is dismantleable into multiple pieces of metal. All these things will need to be thought about by the magic user. As far as using a 9th level spell slot for this, it could seem a little bit of a waste when you consider how powerful some of the other 9th level spells are. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that could be done with this spell, but I'm a little bit ambivalent about it used as a 9th level spell. And in combat, should the 2-hit roll miss and nothing else gets transformed, does that mean the spell evaporates like so many other spells do? Or is it in effect until the magic user touches something? The next spell is Energy Drain. It has a range of touch, a permanent duration, and it will affect one creature. By casting this spell, the magic user opens a channel between the plane he or she is on and the negative material plane. The caster becomes the conductor between the two planes. As soon as he or she touches, equal to a 2-hit if melee is involved, any living creature, the victim loses 2 energy levels, as if struck by a specter. A monster loses 2 hit dice permanently, both for hit points and attack ability. A character loses levels, hit dice, and hit points and abilities permanently until regained through adventuring if applicable. The material component of this spell is Essence of Spectre or Vampire Dust. Preparation requires 3 segments. The material component is then cast forth, and upon touching the victim, the magic user speaks the triggering word, causing the dwemer to take effect instantly. There's always a 5%, 1 in 20 chance that the caster will also be affected by the energy drain and lose 1 energy level at the same time the victim is drained of 2. Humans or humanoids brought to 0 energy level by this spell become Juju zombies. Quite the powerful spell. If I recall correctly, clerics do have a 7th level spell, Restoration, that will allow a character to regain 1 level. It is reversible, so it could be used in a similar manner, though it is not quite as powerful since the victim only loses 1 level, not 2. The description of the spell also seems to indicate that the preparation takes 3 segments. There's no talk of any limit to the delay between the preparation and touching the victim. And since there's a triggering word, I could see a magic user casting the spell, going into a social setting, and with a casual, normal social type contact, a handshake or whatever, speak the word and drain 2 levels from his or her victim. Of course, at that point, everyone around you knows what happened, but it could be an effective way to approach someone unawares of the danger that is coming their way in the form of the magic user. I'll also quickly note that Juju zombies are described in the second monster manual in case anyone isn't aware of them. I'm also going to note this spell, unlike the clerical spell, which is really aimed at restoring, is not reversible. So a magic user cannot restore lost levels from an undead attack or another magic user using energy drain. Also not mentioned here is the effects on alignment of using such a spell. Something that the GM needs to think about before introducing the spell to their campaign. Overall, I quite like this spell. Next is Mordenkainen's Disjunction. It has a range of 0, a permanent duration, an area of effect of a 3-inch radius, and a casting time of 9 segments. When this spell is cast, all magic and/or magic items within the radius of the spell, except those on the person of or being touched by the spellcaster, are disjoined. That is, spells being cast are separated into their individual components, usually spoiling the effect, as does a dispel magic, and permanent and magic items must likewise save versus spell if actually cast on a creature, or versus a dispel magic otherwise, or be turned into normal items. Even artifacts and relics are subject to Mordenkainen's disjunction, although there is only a 1% chance per level of the spellcaster of actually affecting such powerful items. Thus, all potions, scrolls, rings, rods, et al., miscellaneous magic items, artifacts and relics, arms and armor, swords and miscellaneous weapons within 3 inches of the spellcaster can possibly lose all their magical properties when Mordenkainen's disjunction is cast. Note: destroying artifacts is a dangerous business and 95% likely to attract the attention of some powerful being who has an interest or connection with the device. Additionally, if an artifact is destroyed, the casting magic user must save versus spell at -4 or permanently lose all spellcasting abilities. So this is clearly a potentially very powerful spell, one that can cause quite a lot of disruption and should be used quite carefully. Presumably you don't want your allies' magical items and abilities to be affected, but you want your opponents to be. There's a lot of careful planning and strategy that will need to be involved with using this spell. The fact that you can't really choose the area being affected, but it is strictly around you, means there could be some pretty serious risk involved here, or it is literally being done in a safe area with the item that you want destroyed near you, and everything else and everyone else may be close enough to help in case something does happen. This is also another spell where some DM notes would be useful. What does permanently lose all spellcasting abilities mean exactly? Does the magic user retain his or her hit points? Does he lose all his levels and become a 0 level character? What exactly is involved with that? It's again something that a DM should think about before this spell is introduced. It's a very powerful spell I quite like, with a lot of possibilities to it for clever players. The last spell is Succor. It has a range of touch, a casting time of 1 to 4 days, The duration is special, and the area of effect is one individual. This spell is essentially the same as the 7th level cleric spell of the same name. A sucker spell cast by a magic user will teleport without error, the individual breaking the object and speaking the command word. If the reverse is used, the archmage is likewise brought to the presence of the individual. Unlike the cleric spell of the same name, QV, the summoned archmage has no choice than to answer the summons, making this version of the spell rare indeed. Intervening planes have only a 1% chance each, cumulative, of causing irrevocable loss of the individual or spellcaster involved in the sucker. The material component used must be gem material of not less than 5,000 gold piece value. Whether it is a faceted gem or not is immaterial. The components can only be enchanted once per month, usually on the night of a clear full moon. At that time, the object is set for the type of sucker and its final destination, either the location of the spellcasting or an area well known to the mage. So I've already said most of what I think about this spell when I was discussing the cleric spell. There'll be a link to that in the description. I will mention that here it is gem material of no less than 5,000 gold piece value that must be used. It seems it doesn't need a single gem, but maybe multiple gems could be used. I'm also a little bit curious as to why the casting time is 1 to 4 days, but there's no explanation given as to what affects that duration. Perhaps since there's a mention of the moon, if it's a full moon, it's 1 day. If it's a waning or waxing moon, it's 2 or 3 days. And if no moon is in the sky, it's 4 days. So that's a little bit of a lack here. So we'll give it a quick recap. Crystal Brittle, I'm a little bit ambivalent about, and if you compare it with the disjunction, the difference in power is quite noticeable. Crystal Brittle will only affect one item, whereas disjunction will affect any number of items. The items in disjunction are less likely to survive the spell than in Crystal Brittle, assuming they're magical items. Of course, non-magical items would not be affected by a disjunction. There is that, but still, it really marks how different those spells are. Energy Drain, really cool, really powerful spell, but to be used carefully by a magic user of good alignment. Clever players will really be able to take full advantage of this in very interesting ways. Sucker, I quite like, some good possibilities with this spell, and I forgot to mention when discussing it that unlike the cleric spell, which seems to only bring people back to the sanctuary of the cleric, the magic user version allows the a person being called back to be called back to any area that the mage is familiar with or wherever the spell was cast. So a little bit more flexibility there perhaps. This has been the Grumpy Old Slan, looking at 9th level magic user spells in Unearthed Arcana.